Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the TWSN Live Show, live on the Right Way Sports Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Daniel Alameda, and I'm here with my guys. As always, we got Will Laughlin, the lead NBA analyst for TWSN. Will, how you doing?
Dude, I am stoked to be here. And of course, we're going to have a fun hour right here now. But right after this, we got my Wizards going against your Celtics. And I'm ready to get some revenge for Kelly Olynyk dropping 30 and acting like the Larry Bird in Game 7 a few years ago. I'm ready for revenge from that night.
We'll see. We'll talk about it. And we got Jake Circus back in the 805. Jake, how you doing?
Oh, I could be a lot better. I'm sick. I burnt my tongue today, but wouldn't miss this show back-to-back weeks for the world, so good to be back. Got a lot of stuff today. Felt like I haven't watched the NBA in so long, but comes playoff time, it's exciting.
Yes, sir. Max Merrill, we got a big-time debate for you, man. Max, how we doing?
Doing great, man. We had a great UFC pay-per-view this past weekend, and obviously we got the NBA playoffs pretty much starting, I guess, today, if we're counting the play-in. So we got a lot of good things coming up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And before we get into the actual debates and the actual discussions, make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel, right? We got a lot of good content coming on here. It's the off season. And also we got a mobile app. Download the TWSN mobile app. Find us on Instagram. Find us on Twitter at TWSN. But let's get right into it. I know it's the off season, but we got a huge topic to talk about. The Miami Dolphins, right? They're coming off a 10-6 season. Max, you're a Dolphins fan, but do you expect this team to be better than they were last year? We'll let you start it off.
They have to be, right? So let's start with the obvious. Tua Tagovailoa is in year 2. And listen, I'm not going to deny it. It was a pretty underwhelming year 1. I don't think it was the worst. I think there's a lot of people out there, especially in the media, that are acting like he's already a bust. And I think it's too soon to say that. We all know, and I think we can all agree that we know what a quarterback is made of starting year 2. I think that's a fair time to say that. And I think we're going to see inevitable progression into his game. And I think a lot of it is his own natural ability. I think he didn't show the best side of himself last year. And also the additions that this team has made all around. Let's talk about drafting Jalen Waddle with the 6th overall pick. And, obviously you're banking on the production of Devontae Parker to go up. A lot, like I mentioned in times and previous podcasts, guys like Mike Gesicki is his preferred target. I think Mike Gesicki is only going to get better. I think Devontae Parker, he's a very good receiver, but the issue was that he just wasn't on the field as much as we'd like him to be as Dolphins fans. And I think that if he's on the field, he can certainly build rapport with Tua. And I think, even guys like Preston Williams, he's an impressive guy. His issues, again, injuries. He just can't really stay consistently on the field. So assuming that those guys could stay on the field most of next year, I do think that Tua's progression will come. And I also, there was improvements in the offensive line. People forget that 3 out of the 5 starters for Miami were rookies last year. So who's to say that those guys can't improve? Obviously they took Austin Jackson in the middle of the first round last year. He had a bit of a topsy-turvy year, but I do think that I'm expecting progression from him. And obviously the Dolphins went out and drafted Liam Eichenberg in the 2nd round this year. They traded up for him. And I expect him to fill in that other tackle role. And I just think this offensive line will certainly improve. And obviously on the defensive side, you retain most of the players. I'm expecting a little bit of a regression there because the Dolphins defense was top tier last year. There's no argument about that. But I do think they're one of the better sides and they have one of the better defensive coaches in the league. So I do expect this team to be very competitive.
Jake, I know you got some strong feelings here.
So
let me hear it.
I do this at the beginning of every offseason after the draft, looking at every team's depth chart and saying, okay, what do they look like last year? And based on what they did this offseason, what could they possibly look like next year? And I think with Miami, it's very complex because you have a team that won double-digit games, and people forget that they won double-digit games. I thought they won 9. Turns out that they won 10. They have what seems like an elite head coach in Brian Flores, but they have, I think, the 28th best quarterback in football. Full season of Tua. Ryan Fitzpatrick out the door. They are all committed 100% to Tua. And let's go through this roster. Their offensive line will get better. Yes, Austin Jackson will get better. He's only 21, or this is now his 22-year season. He was very raw, very young coming out of USC. Liam Eichenberg, I think it's a bad idea that he's going to be the day one right tackle. I don't think he's ready. He's awful against speedy edge rushers. Going against Jalen Phillips every day in practice is going to help him, but I don't think Eichenberg's going to be ready. Moving Hunt back inside the guard, his natural position will be good. Skur at center is fine. Kinley's going to take a step at left guard. I think the offensive line is still bottom tier. It's going to still be bottom 10 in the league. It was last year. They're not going to take a huge jump. They will be better, but it's not going to completely kill them. Now the receivers. Oh, they have Devontae Parker. They signed Will Fuller. They drafted Jalen Waddle. Well, Devontae Parker has caught less than 300 passes in his 8-year NFL career. Will Fuller finally broke out, then got caught for steroids. He missed the last 5 games of the year. And then Jalen Waddle missed all last year. He's great, but year one, coming off of an ankle fracture surgery, we don't know. Can Tua get in the ball? So, and then obviously Preston Williams coming off of a torn ACL. So that's 4 receivers right there who went all on the field. One of the best receiving cores in the league. Can they all be on the field? We don't know. Tight end, I think, is fine. Now the defense. One of the best defenses in the league last year. But I look at their safeties. Both those safeties are absolutely terrible. Brandon Jones will take a step. And who's their strong safety? Eric Rowe. So their safeties suck. Their linebacker play is subpar. And I think their D-line got better with Jalen Phillips. Raekwon Davis still there from Alabama. Christian Wilkins there from Clemson. But the corners, so their corners were so good last year. They had the best cornerback group in the entire league. But you can only have a career year once. Byron Jones had a great year. Xavier Howard was superb last year, career year. You can only have a career year once. And when you rely so much on turnovers, it's very hard to replicate that. They are bound to regress just because of how overachieving their defense was last year. And when you factor in how turnover heavy, how reliant on turnovers they were to forcing the football to their corners, it makes it that much harder to replicate that. I don't think they will. And you say that they have a top 5 head coach. Well, I love Brian Flores, but let's make the playoffs first before you say he's a top 5 head coach.
I didn't say that.
No, I'm sorry. In general, people in general consider Brian Flores to be up there.
I haven't heard that.
I don't think he's top 7 yet. Let's make the playoffs.
And let me just add on, right? Because I mean, the biggest thing I just want to talk about the Dolphins as a whole. I'm doing the study right now. I'm putting out an article about Tua, right? Because I've been curious. I watched all 9 games of his film, and what I saw was an offensive line that wasn't good, right? They are going to improve because the 3 guys were rookies. But I don't know if they'll even be top 20. They were 28th last year. I don't know if they'll be able to crack top 20 next year. So you're still going to have a bad offensive line. The run game is going to be very meh. Who's going to be your power back? Who's going to be the guy that gets on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1? Myles Gaskin isn't that guy. So the offense is good, but I also saw so many times, right? Tua started 9 games. In 5 of those games, he was playing with the lead, right? 5 of those games, he was playing with the lead. 5 of those games, he started out the ball set when they were up by 7, right? He gets the ball passed on the opponent's field. And that's because of their defense. That's because they're such a turnover-heavy defense last year. They were number 1 in the league in turnovers. I don't think that's going to be the same exact case next year. So I expect for them to regress. I expect for Tua to have some sort of progression, right? Because you have better receivers. You got guys like Jalen Waddle. You got guys who are quicker. You got Will Fuller, who's a deep threat. But I think the offensive line, right, and the regression from that defense is going to keep this team below 10 wins. And I'm not confident that they're going to be even better than the Patriots.
So I'm expecting the Dolphins to, I would say, hold serve. And what I mean by that is I honestly think all these points you guys have mentioned, I fully expect it to balance out and for them to overall be around where they were last year. Now, it's interesting because there's obviously an extra game, 17 games instead of 16. So I'm thinking 9-10 wins in the 8 to 10 range for this team. They're obviously not Super Bowl contenders. I don't think any of us think that.
Yeah.
But I still absolutely think that they are a top 8 team in the AFC, which is in the top half of the AFC.
But you have to have over 10 wins to be a top 8 team. You have to have over 10 wins, and they're not going to have over 10 wins this year.
Not necessarily. I mean,
yes. Last year,
here's the difference.
I understand, like, in theory, to be a top 8 team, yeah, like 9-10 wins, but that doesn't necessarily just happen actually on the football field. So I think they're going to be playoff contenders. They're obviously not like a contender to win the Super Bowl or even come close to making it.
They're not making the playoffs.
They're not even going to win the division with the Bills. But all these points you guys made, I agree with, and I think they're going to hold serve because of that. Like, let's not act like they didn't go.
So here's the thing, and Daniel, maybe I need a little bit more. I need a little bit more clarification. So I'm assuming we all have the Bills winning that division.
Yes.
So with the Bills winning that division, do you have the Patriots going to?
Yes.
I'm assuming you have the Patriots going to. So here's my argument against that. While I do think the Patriots have 100% improved, and there's no doubt they'll be a much better football team than last year, there's a lot of question marks with regard to the fact that, they've added a lot of players. There's no certainty with regard to how good or how bad these players will be and fit in that system. I expect them to be good, but here's the thing with the Dolphins. The Dolphins, they have one of the youngest rosters in the NFL. They did last year, and they do this year. A lot of these players that you mentioned and a lot of the question marks you have are fair, but we already have a sample size as to how these players will fit in this system. So the thing is, with the Patriots, there's a level of uncertainty, whereas the Dolphins, we know what to expect, and I do expect that they will be better than last year, only because these guys are so young, and I do think that these guys will develop, and I think that starts with the quarterback. Listen, there's no doubt that the defense will regress, right? I mean, it's very rare that you see an NFL defense be that great and continue to be that great. I still think they'll be in the top tier of NFL defenses next year, and I don't think anybody's going to debate that, but I don't know if they'll be quite as good as they were last year. Now,
they won't be top 5. They won't be top 5. They won't be top 5. Last year, they were number 1 in takeaways, and I did the math. I went back the past 6 years. Every single team that was in the top 3 in takeaways, they regress at least 9 to 10 spots. In takeaways, they won't be top 10. I can guarantee you that this year. They won't.
Well, I'd like to see the median age of those teams, how old those players were on the defensive side, and who was coaching them. So I think you're discounting the fact that this is a young football team. These are still players that will develop. And listen, I don't disagree that they'll regress because it's inevitable, but I don't know that they're going to regress as much as you think they will. And here's the thing, for sake of argument, say they do regress pretty significantly. The question is, and I think the only question should be, how is number one, Tua Tagovailoa, how is our quarterback going to be playing next year?
Yeah.
If he really takes that step forward and becomes, the Dolphins franchise quarterback, I don't think the defense is going to be relied on nearly as much. And like you said, Tua was playing with a lead most of the game, or most of the time last year. And a lot of it was because the offense couldn't do anything with the ball, but the defense was incredibly dominant. And if we're expecting Tua to take a jump, then I don't think that'll have to be the case anymore, because we're expecting Tua to move the football.
And trust me, and what you're saying is you're expecting Tua to move the football, right? And what I saw in their team, he is going to improve. But that offensive line is still going to hold them back. They played in his 9 starts, they played only 2 top 15 defenses, the Bills and the Rams. Both of those games, he looked bad. In the Rams game, he had barely 100 yards. The Bills game, we know what happened.
That was his first game. I mean, that was his first start.
But what I'm telling you is I'm scared because that offensive line, and by him,
and he was also going against arguably the best pass rush in football.
But so that's what's going to happen when he plays the Bucs this year. What's going to happen when he plays real legitimate defenses? He didn't face that last year, and he played with the lead for 5 out of 9 games. The other 2 games that he didn't, he got taken out. Right. So that's what it remains to be seen. I'm just not confident that with this defense regressing, right, him having to play from behind, I'm not confident that that's going to lead to a 10-win.
Well, my question is, we don't know if he's going to be playing from behind. Right. So here's the thing. The defense, again, will regress, but I don't think they're going to regress. I don't think. No, of course. But I'm saying, who's to say the defense is going to regress nearly as much as you think they are? Listen, Brian Flores is bringing back the right people. He's bringing back most of the same players, and he's also added to this defense. Now, I remember off camera, before the show, you mentioned that we lost leaders such as Kyle Van Noy and Bobby McCain. And while I understand where you're coming from, you have to understand these aren't players that we lost; these are players that we let go of. And the reason why we let go of them is because the coaching staff trusts the players that are on the depth chart currently to improve and to take over as leaders. For example, to replace Bobby McCain as a leader in the secondary, you got Jason McCourty. And as a Patriots fan, that Jason McCourty is quite the leader, especially there with his experience. Yeah. And Bobby McCain, Yeah, no, I think the defense in general, they may have lost some guys, but they've certainly have the guys to replace them. And I was slipping on the name before, Kyle Van Noy. I by no means do I think he's a terrible football player. I think he's very valuable, and I do think he should have arguably stayed on the team. I think that was more of a financial decision because if you watch the tape, Andrew Van Ginkel did a very, very good job holding his own as a starting linebacker for this football team on a cheap deal. So I think Brian Flores, listen, I think you guys are underrating how good Brian Flores is as a defensive coach. I think he's shown enough. I don't know if I'm going to call him a top 5. I haven't gone as far as to say that because he hasn't even made the playoffs yet. But I think he's shown that he's in the top tier of NFL coaches, especially on the defensive side. And I think that I'm going to defer to his decision making when it comes to letting go of players on the defense and sticking with the guys on the depth chart.
For me,
they also have one. Just one note here: they have their schedule is actually easier than it was last year. They had one of the tougher schedules, and I know they start out pretty tough for the Dolphins, but it gets a lot easier. And they schedules, I believe, in the top 10 when it comes to the easier schedules in the league. So it's another reason I just think they're going to hold serve. I think they'll be in contention for a playoff spot. We've mentioned they kind of had a QB roulette going on last year with Tua and Fitzpatrick, who was the starter. It kept rotating. Now you actually have stability in Tua, and you're putting all that trust in Tua. So I expect the offense to improve enough to where the defense, the young guys are going to kind of grow. There's going to be, their numbers are going to get worse, but you're also going to see some player-to-player improvements. And like we mentioned, Brian Flores is going to be a huge part in that. Overall, I still see this team being in contention for a playoff spot, but I wouldn't pencil them in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a fair point. I'm not going to come in and argue that they're 100% a playoff team. That's not my argument. My argument is simply, I think they could be, I think there's a very strong chance they could be a double-digit team or a team that wins double-digit games, given the fact that they did that last year with, in my opinion, a worse roster and with a quarterback who, in my opinion, wasn't ready to start when they started him. There's rumors, and again, this is semi-speculation, semi-reported, and I personally don't think that Tua Tagovailoa was ready to start against the Rams. I think that they were planning to have Fitzpatrick as the starter for a few more weeks, but ownership stepped in and said, we think Tua should be the starting quarterback. We want him because he's such a draw to play some games. And I understand from a business standpoint, but you mentioned the Rams game. That was his first career start. He didn't look really that ready. He didn't really look that settled. Right. So with that in mind, I do think that we're going to see a dramatic improvement in just the quarterback play. And I think with that, I think we're going to see an improvement in the overall football team. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win at least 10 games or 11 games next year. And again, I'm not going to pencil them in as a playoff team, but yeah.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So, over the course, no Fitzpatrick. Last year, like you said, they did the whole quarterback roulette thing, and I think it was rough for Tua's development because we never really saw that situation where a rookie quarterback was playing with such a good team, where they were in a mode or a win now mode that Tua kind of had a shorter leash, if you will. So next year. It's all Tua. Fitzpatrick's gone. Over the course of a 17-game season, do you have confidence that in over 60% of those, Tua can win a guy who was 33rd in yards per game, 26th in passer rating, 29th in completion percentage? How much of a leap do you think he's going to take? Because those are bottom-end backup quarterback numbers. If he turns into a decent starter in year 2, which I think would be a pretty big leap, the defense is going to get worse. The offensive line still has a ton of young pieces, and the receivers, we don't know how much they're going to play. Right. So, do you have confidence that in over 60% of those games, at the end of the day, Tua can get it done over 60% of the time?
He has to. I mean, there's no question about it. He's the number 5 overall pick for a reason, and the Dolphins have him as the franchise quarterback for a reason. Listen, we saw the signs in college. Tua was one of the more prolific passers in all of the NCAA or on all of college football. And I think that, that has to be the expectation. You're not going to sit here if you're a team like the Dolphins with the core that they have and the coaching staff that they have and sit there and assume that Tua can't get it done. You're building the team around him. Chan Gailey was something that held Chan Gailey, our former offensive coordinator, was someone that his play calling held back to his development. I really wholeheartedly believe that. We brought him in because he had experience with Ryan Fitzpatrick back in Buffalo. And, I guess the team, from a coaching perspective, probably went in with the idea that, Fitzpatrick would be the starter for a lot longer than he ended up being. So I personally think that with taking Chan Gailey out, Tua's quarterback coach was just hired, or former quarterbacks coach was hired into the Miami Dolphins coaching staff. You're bringing in guys that are going to make this team more situated around Tua, that will allow Tua to thrive under a system that he's probably more familiar with in college. So to answer your question, I can't say definitively one way or another, but I can definitely say the expectation has to be there, because if not, we're going to have a lot of serious problems. And I think the Dolphins are going to have to move on.
All I'm going to say is, like I said, Tua is going to make a jump, right? It's inevitable. He had no offseason last year. He's improved wide receivers this year. Offensive line's going to improve. But I don't think that jump is going to be an exponential jump, right? I haven't seen enough out of that offensive line. I haven't seen enough out of those weapons. And like I said, this schedule at the start, I'm not confident that they're going to be good right off the bat. I love the end of the season schedule, so they could finish off strong. But you're telling me the Patriots, the Bills, the Raiders, Colts, and Bucks, I could see them going 2-3, even 1-4 right off the bat. And if you start off 1-4, that's a scary place to be if you're a second-year quarterback like Tua.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first one to agree that at least the start of the year is a little rough for the Dolphins. But listen, you're getting the Patriots at the perfect time. You're getting the Patriots week 1. We don't know who the starter is. Probably going to be Cam Newton. I think eventually, and I think you'll agree with me, Daniel, that Mac Jones will end up being the starter at some point next year. I think he's a better fit, at least for the system, than Cam Newton has proven to be. So let's take that into account. Quarterback play is not going to be quite where it will be later on in the year with the Patriots. And also, we have to take into account time to get those guys gelling together. They added so many new faces on both sides of the football in the offseason that it's going to take some time for those guys to get to know each other on the field, build chemistry, and build rapport. And I think while I definitely don't think the Patriots are a bad football team, I think the Dolphins might have gotten them at the perfect time. I'm not guaranteeing a win, but I do think that if the Dolphins have a good chance, I think this is the best chance the Dolphins have at beating them in Foxborough. As for the Bucks, I don't know. I think the Bucks are Super Bowl champions for a reason, and I don't think the Dolphins will beat them, but I don't think most football teams will either. But the Raiders, they're a very up-and-down team. We don't know what to expect. The Dolphins just beat them last year on a crazy practically Hail Mary play. And then also, so I think, look, as Dolphins fans, we have to go into the season, and I'm speaking to Dolphins fans out there, with the understanding that our quarterback will develop. Hopefully he'll develop like we think he will be, and this is a young roster with a really promising coaching staff, so the expectation has to be high. We've had so many years of disappointment that the expectation needs to be high. When you go from having the worst start in the history of the NFL to finishing in the top 5 one year, to finishing 10-6 literally the year after, something's going right. And I think you have to have faith in this coaching staff that they are making the right decisions, because they've proven thus far that even though last year was technically year 2 of a rebuild, 10-6 year 2 of a rebuild is a heck of a rebuild. So I have confidence that this team knows what they're doing and why, and I'm confident this football team will be competitive next year.
Yeah, and I don't think any of us are denying that. Competitive is a good word, because they're not in a place where they're a shoo-in for the playoffs, and I think that's where your argument goes wrong. If you're not a shoo-in for the playoffs, like the Browns are, like the Bills are, like the Chiefs are, I'm not confident you'll win 10+ games. If it's just competitive,
couldn't you use the same argument with the Patriots?
Yeah, completely. But I'm not guaranteeing that they win 10+ games.
Look, the Bengals were competitive before Joe Burrow's injury last year. The Falcons were. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. The Bengals weren't competitive. Go look at their first 6 games other than the Baltimore game.
They were not a great football team.
I did not say great football team. I said competitive, just like you said competitive.
No, but I'm using competitive. I'm using competitive as in a team that can go out and win 10+ games. That's competitive.
No. That is not competitive. A team that consistently is a double-digit win team is a team that is consistently favored in games, that consistently wins the games they should win, and goes on the road, can win a couple primetime games here and there. The Bengals and the Falcons were competitive. The Dolphins will be competitive, but will they be favored? And, can they go on the road and win a Thursday night game against the Patriots? I don't think Tua could do that.
That's what they did last year.
And can they do it back to back? Because again, they have the defense. That's not gonna be their defenses are gonna be pretty above average. But will it be top 5 in the league? I don't think so.
It certainly
I don't
can
thi-
be.
I,
It certainly
I don't
can
think
be.
I just don't think that they
I
have
disagree.
that kind of personnel. But yes, they'll be competitive, just like the
Yeah.
Bengals and the Falcons were last year.
The Bengals and the Falcons are terrible football teams last year. The Dolphins are in a much better position to be. No, last year you're telling me the Bengals and the Falcons were good football teams last year?
The
No,
Falcons
and I'm
were
not
a
saying-
good football team last year.
I
They're
never
not a
said
good football
good.
team.
We're a good
I
football
never
team.
No, I'm
said
not saying
good.
you. I'm just saying. Listen. When I'm talking about competitive, I think we have two different definitions of the word competitive. I'm not saying a team that I think will compete week in and week out in football games. While I do think the Dolphins will do that,
That's the
by
definition
competitive,
of
I mean
competitive.
no. By competitive, I mean a team that will compete for a playoff spot, for a team that will win, that should be in a position to win double-digit games next year, because they did that last year, year 2 of the rebuild. And I think that this team hasn't really gotten dramatically worse. If anything, they got better. So I don't see why they would drop off so significantly.
Look, I would like to point out that when Joe Burrow got injured, the Bengals were 2.5 games out of a playoff spot. And
They
with
weren't going to make the playoffs.
I never
And you know
said they
that too.
would. I never said they would. With the easier part of their schedule up, they have the Dolphins, the Giants, the Cowboys, and the football team up ahead. When Joe Burrow got injured, they were 2.5 games out of a playoff spot.
What was their record?
It was 5-1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and guys, I mean, the Dolphins, they'll be good. They'll be good next year. And like I said, Tua is going to progress. I'm just curious. It all depends on, one, the offensive line. Does the offensive line improve? Can they be top 20 in the league? And the defense, can they stick up with how they performed last year, right? We said the takeaways, if they can continue to be top 5 in takeaways next year, then I think they got a shot. But let's switch it over to the NBA, right? NBA playoffs are here, finally starting. Let's talk about the play-in tournament real quick. My Celtics going against Will's Wizards. Will, give me the breakdown real quick. What do you think for the game tonight?
Whew. All right. Well, so obviously Celtics are not going to have Jaylen Brown tonight. That's huge. In my personal opinion, I think Tatum's going to have to drop 40 in this game. Like I think he has to drop 40 because this team, we know this team has been reliant on their top players for the past few years, and that's been Tatum, it's been Jaylen Brown, it's been Kemba Walker. They're not going to have one of those guys, so you have to have one of your star players basically go off. But it's going to be tough, and I'm actually going to lean towards picking the Celtics. Maybe it's just because I don't want to jinx my team. I don't know why, but I'm just getting this stupid feeling that the Celtics are going to beat us tonight. And it also might be because I don't know how good Beal is going to be. Bradley Beal, last game he played against the Hornets, he missed the 3 games before that with some leg problems. But last game, I believe he had 25 points on like 23 shots. So did not look good. I honestly thought we should have pulled him out of the game, but I am happy that he stuck through it and he didn't re-injure himself. He seems good to go. He's obviously going to play, but I don't know if he's going to be dropping 30 to 40 points on pretty good efficiency like he has been all year. I really don't know. So that's a question mark. You know, in one of these one-game play-in situations, I am expecting Westbrook to have a really good game. Because
Westbrook in the playoffs.
Westbrook in the play-in, baby.
Time out. Sorry, but so Russell Westbrook has never won a playoff series without Kevin Durant. If he wins this, does that mean like he advances around? Like, can we say that he wins a playoff series if he wins tonight? Can we say that?
So Jake,
I wouldn't consider that.
Wait, guys,
I
I'm trying to remember last year if he won the first round series between the Rockets and the Thunder. Was Westbrook on the Thunder or was he on the Rockets? Oh, he's on the Rockets, and the Rockets won a playoff series.
Damn, people give me bad information.
So he has won a playoff series without Kevin Durant. And
people
also,
people give me bad information.
In 2013, or what? It was either 2012 or 2013. I can't quite remember. But Kevin Durant was injured for the playoffs, and the Oklahoma City Thunder made it to the second round. They didn't make it any further because Kevin Durant was the best player on their team. But without Kevin Durant, they won a playoff series when Kevin Durant was out for the year, and Russell Westbrook was their only player. So actually, he's won 2 playoff series.
And he's I was just testing
Eastern Conference Player of the Month. Yeah, you're testing how much I remember my basketball.
I was just
guys.
Yeah. Well, a poor try, my friend. A poor try. But I'm expecting the Celtics to win tonight. I just have a stupid feeling that the Wizards aren't going to get it done for some reason. Maybe I'm just trying to reverse jinx shenanigans, but I'm gonna say
Jason Tatum, I know what you mean, man.
The Celtics are gonna win.
I hope they do, man. It's gonna be tough without Jaylen Brown. But let's talk about the matchup of the week. I think the Lakers versus the Warriors. Right, no one was expecting this Warriors team to even make the playoffs, and the Steph Curry pulled some magic, and they're in. Right, so Lakers versus the Warriors. Who wins? Does LeBron win? Does Steph Curry win? Will, talk to me.
I'm gonna say the Lakers are gonna win, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Warriors won. Now a week ago I was talking about how the Warriors, every time they've played a contender this season, they just have looked like they're an absolute pretender. And that's still very well may be the case, but really in the past few weeks, the Warriors have stepped up and their role players who I've criticized all season long, guys like Oubre and Wiggins has played all right, but he hasn't really been all that great this year. And just their bench, they've actually stepped up in these last few weeks, and they're playing their best basketball of the season right now. So look, Steph Curry in a one-game plan is extremely dangerous because you never know. He could go off for 40, and Anthony Davis might not have his best game. And there you go, the Warriors win. But I'm still going to pick the Lakers, and I think a lot of it has to do with because LeBron James and Anthony Davis look like they're just gearing up, and they're showing us their best stuff of the season right now. LeBron James looks like he's healthy. He looks perfectly fine. He's throwing down alley-oops. So he looks good to go, and Anthony Davis has had some monster performances to close off the season. So that's enough. And also Dennis Schroeder has come back a little earlier than expected. I thought he was going to come back in like the first round of the playoffs, but he's already back for their team. So I'm taking the Lakers, but I would not be surprised at all if the Warriors won this game.
Jake?
Yeah, give me the Lakers. They're playing better basketball. They were not playing good basketball at all when LeBron and Anthony Davis were injured. Davis comes back. He's averaged over 30 points the last 6 or 7 games. Since his first 2 games coming back, then the next 7 games he's been on a tear. LeBron says he's healthy. I'm going to take his word for it. And then it comes down to this. It's LeBron versus Steph in a one-game series. And people think that Steph has had the upper hand on LeBron when they face off against each other in the playoffs. That's just not the case. Steph has never played in a big-time playoff series, multiple games, or pretty much a huge moment without Klay Thompson. And, we're going to see that this year. So LeBron is more suited to carry the team, even though he doesn't have to. Steph has to go like 2007 LeBron with the Cavs mode to just not only win this game, but keep the Warriors competitive. It's different in the regular season, but I just don't think Steph's very capable of doing that in the postseason, especially not in a one-game series versus LeBron and Anthony Davis.
I disagree. Like you said, he's not capable. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think he's 100% capable of doing it. I'm just rolling with the Lakers, right? I think Steph Curry, because if he loses this game, he still gets another chance. I think he'll end up winning against the Spurs or the Grizzlies, I think.
Right.
But this game, Lakers, it's playoff basketball. LeBron James, give me the Lakers all day long. And let's talk about the actual playoffs, though. Max, your Heat, right? The number 6 Heat are going up against the Bucks. Do the Bucks turn it around from last year? I mean, because you guys beat them last year, or are you confident in your team beating the Bucks once again?
I mean, the Bucks should turn around. I think they got better from last year. When you add a guy like Drew Holiday, I think it makes all the difference in the world. But let's not discount the Heat possibly beating them again. If they can lay out the same game plan they did against Giannis last year, and the shooters aren't making their shots like they didn't last year, there's no ruling out Miami. Listen, I'm going to favor Milwaukee because I think Milwaukee's a better basketball team. But by no means do I think the Heat cannot compete and possibly even win this series.
Yeah, I mean, this series is going to be a lot closer than last year's was, and I don't see it being one-sided in either direction. I don't see the Bucks, beating them in 5, and I don't see the Heat repeating what they did last year and beating the Bucks this year in 5. So I think this is going to be a 6 to 7 game series. I am going to lean towards Milwaukee ever so slightly because the circumstances are different this year. I mean, for one, it was pretty clear that the Bucks were not taking the bubble as nearly as seriously as the Heat did. Now it's a little bit more of a normal playoff format. I think the Bucks, that'll help, the Bucks more than it will the Heat. For one, Max, you alluded to it, Drew Holiday is, I mean, I really cannot emphasize enough how much of an upgrade that is over Eric Bledsoe, because Eric Bledsoe in the regular season is honestly, an average to above average NBA basketball player. But in the playoffs, he becomes nearly unplayable. And now you have Drew Holiday, a guy who in the playoffs has locked down Damian Lillard before. and he stepped up in several playoff games and series. And I think that's a huge difference maker, because now you have a guy who can put on, a Gordon Dragic or even a Jimmy Butler, who are two guys who torched the Bucks for stretches on the offensive end in that series last year. Look, when it comes to Giannis, it's going to be tough, but because I look, they still have the pieces to do what they did last year. They don't have Jay Crowder, but honestly, Giannis had the most success in one-on-one isolation situations. He had the most success against Jay Crowder, so I don't really care about that. They still have Bam Adebayo, who's going to be a super tough matchup for Giannis. But if Giannis can make the passes to his corner and wing shooters, I think last year they shot 32.5% from three. The Bucks did, their role players in the series. I expect that number to come up. Like, that is a terrible shooting number. And they were a really good three-point shooting team last year. They just had an anomaly of a bad series when it comes to shooting the basketball. You have a guy like Brennan Forbes, who's a 40% three-point shooter now. You have Drew Holiday shooting 40% from three, and PJ Tucker, who's one of the best corner three-point shooters in the league. So I expect that number to come up dramatically. That'll have an influence in this game. The Bucks' defensive scheme is a bit adjusted enough to where I actually have some confidence that maybe Mike Budenholzer will be able to adjust enough in the playoffs. Maybe I'm just holding out pointless hope at this point, because I think I talked about it last week, how I don't think he should have a job with the Bucks anymore. But whatever. Their defensive scheme is a bit different. They don't pack the paint nearly as much. Last year, they basically took all the risks in the world, leaving the Heat open, their shooters open, which is a terrible idea because the Heat are a great three-point shooting team. This year, it's a little bit different. When they still have that drop big man, Brook Lopez still drops in pick and rolls, and Giannis still helps a lot. But there are guys like Middleton, Holiday, and DiVincenzo, they don't help as much and pack the paint, so they actually stay on their man on the perimeter. So I think that'll help. But overall, look, I think Giannis is going to be a bit more effective against the wall. I think he's honestly a bit of an improved playmaker. You have another creator on the outside in Holiday, so Middleton doesn't have to do all the work, especially in the fourth quarter, late in games. You have a couple guys who can do that. So I'm going to say this is going to go the distance, and I'm going to pick the Bucks really slightly to beat the Heat. But it's going to be really close.
Well, the Bucks better win, or else I will be relentless, because this is the first round. This is not the conference finals. It's not even the conference semifinals. This is where Giannis shines in the playoffs. And, it's not April. It is May. So this is when Giannis does start to lose in the playoffs. Not April. May has obviously never touched June basketball. Maybe if he wins 2 playoff series, he'll get to play in June for the first time ever. But,
Are you really going to criticize Giannis if they lose to the Brooklyn Nets and be like, guys, because he's going to average like 40 and they're probably going to lose.
If they lose this round, it's on Giannis.
I'm talking about this round.
Nets.
I have said on this show that the picture in the ether of Chris Middleton and Giannis holding up the Larry O'Brien trophy does not exist and will never exist. It just doesn't exist. And they better win. I think the Heat are a really good team. I think he could struggle in the couple games in Miami with fans down in Florida, but I think it's like 65% American Airlines Center or Arena, whatever it's center or arena. I don't know what it is, but it's either pretty sure like 65-70%. So those games might be hard, but Giannis better go off. Like, this is not about his role players. This is not about his role players. This is one of the best teams Giannis has ever had. Probably, Will, you would agree this might be the best team he's ever had. Maybe second or first best Bucks team that Giannis has ever had. They got better from last year, even though they were the 3rd seed. Nets and Sixers obviously were amazing this year, but it's going to come down to Giannis. Like, he's going to play great defense, but it's going to come down to his offense.
Yeah,
and specifically late in games, because that is where he has struggled.
And the other thing is, I have more faith in the Bucks, and their defensive scheme is a bit less reliant on just packing the paint and leaving shooters wide open. It's not as bad as it was in the past couple of years, where that's been a huge Achilles weakness, a huge weakness for them. However, I still have questions. Like, Giannis, he has to hit his free throws. Like, 3-point shots is kind of a lost art, but there is no excuse for Giannis still shooting 60 and 50% from the free throw line in the regular season and in postseason series. There's just no excuse. They're wide open shots. And look, I get it. LeBron's not the best the best free throw shooter either. But when you're on the line, you have to make the Heat pay. And the Heat last year, they put Giannis on the line all the time. They didn't fear Giannis. They're like, Yeah, we'll allow Giannis to shoot free throws because we know he's going to make 1 out of 2, and if we don't foul him, he's going to make an easy dunk on us. So I mean, that's just you're getting less points that way by fouling him. Giannis, he has to make him pay, and I also hope that Giannis can be used a little bit more of a man defender because I know how the Bucks love to use him, and he's super effective as that help side defender. He's incredible. He's a top 5 defender in the league because of his impact in that area. But he has to be used as a bit more of a man defender, especially in the late games. He cannot just not be on Jimmy Butler while Jimmy Butler is cooking them or against Bam. He has to match up against those guys. And it's partly on Giannis, but it's also partly on Mike Budenholzer to say, Giannis, go out and guard those guys, dude. We're going to put you man-to-man on those guys.
I think
hoping those are the two other big keys in this series.
The biggest takeaway in the series is it's on Giannis. I'm sorry. That's the bottom line. If Giannis doesn't win this, it's his play style. That's the bottom line. The way this team is set up, the way the Bucks have been playing all year long, as Jake said, this is the best team, arguably maybe even at worst, the second best team he's ever played on. So this is on Giannis. If he doesn't win, that's the storyline around this game. But let's talk about another storyline. The New York Knicks, right? Surprising team. They're the number 4 seed going up against the number 5 seed, the Atlanta Hawks. I think the Knicks win this series, right? I don't know if I'm just betting on the Cinderella story. I think they win it. They're 3-0 in the season series against the Hawks so far. They beat them all 3 times by 10+ points. I'm confident in this team, the Knicks, but Will, our lead NBA analyst, talk to me about the series.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to pick the Knicks as well. I don't know. I actually haven't checked who's favored in this series, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Hawks. But I don't really care. I'm picking the Knicks. I think they have a good amount of playoff translation. I think their defense is still going to be one of the best. It's still going to be locked down. And I'm not even going to focus as much on the Knicks because I just expect their offense or what they did in the regular season to translate in the playoffs enough for them to win the series for the Knicks. I want to focus a little bit more on the Hawks and specifically Trae Young because, look, the Hawks have in this series, the Hawks have the best player in the series. Trae Young is better than Julius Randle. He's the best player in the series. However, I have some serious questions about whether Trae Young's game, you talked about play style with Giannis, but Trae Young's game is very reliant on getting to the free throw line, and he draws a lot of fouls that are very stupid and questionable, and a lot of people don't really like him for it. And look, it is what it is. I'm not going to say I just hate on Trae Young just because he does this stuff, but I am going to criticize him for when it doesn't work in the postseason because we know it's been a bit of a problem with James Harden in his career, how he doesn't get as many free throws in the playoffs as he does in the regular season. Now, James Harden's obviously better than Trae Young, but I think a similar thing is going to happen with Trae Young. Look, Trae Young, he's going to be doubled. He's going to be trapped. He's a smaller guy. James Harden is 6'5". Trae Young is like 6 foot flat. The Knicks are going to be super physical. Tom Thibodeau is the exact kind of coach that I would expect to game plan very, very well for Trae Young. I'm expecting them to trap and double team. I'm expecting them, like I said, to be physical. And I'm not sure how many calls he's going to get. He's going to get some calls, but he's just not going to get nearly the amount that he gets in the regular season. He's still an excellent playmaker, so I expect him to impact the game that way. But I just don't know how great of a scorer he's really going to be. And the Hawks are going to need him to be an all-world scorer, averaging close to around 30 points per game. And I don't know if he's going to get there, considering that he averages, 25 a game and on a lot of free throws. And he is a very good free throw shooter. So he's going to knock him down. He's just not going to get the same rate that he does in the regular season, that he does in the regular season. And I think that's going to be a big issue. That's not to say that that's going to be an issue for his whole career. Like, I expect him to overcome this. He is still a great shooter and has excellent shooting range. So we'll see how that translates in this playoff series. But starting off in the playoffs, I think Trae Young's first playoff series is going to be kind of rough. I'm expecting it to be rough, but I do think he'll get better over his career.
Max, Jake, anything else you guys got to add about the Cinderella Knicks?
They've been fun, man. They've been really fun.
Yeah. Like, the NBA is better when the Knicks are
100%.
Like, the Knicks are a big market team, and I'm not. It's fun to see memes clowning them for their fans. It's mostly their fans just completely go over the top with expectations and them getting Kyrie and KD and Zion, and that was just completely unrealistic. But now they're actually good. It's good for the sport overall because the Knicks are such a big market. I said this last week, but I'll say it again. If the Knicks, I don't care if the New York Knicks get swept. Like, their season is still a huge success,
major success,
regardless of the series. Which honestly means there's not that much pressure on them. They can just go out and play basketball.
go out and do what they've been doing. And let's talk about the West real quick, right? I mean, we got the Suns who are the number 2 seed, the Jazz who are the number 1 seed. I'm just curious. I don't want to go game or series by series, but who is like the number 1 contender to the Lakers right now if you guys had to pick?
Okay, so if the Lakers beat the Warriors, they'll be matched up against the Suns, which I hate because I really love the Suns, and I thought the Suns were the biggest contender, but they're gonna have to face the Lakers in the first round. And a couple weeks ago, if you had told me that, I would have been like, okay, I actually might pick the Suns to win. But after seeing Anthony Davis, being back into his superstar form, after seeing LeBron come back from his injury a second time, and now it looks like he is okay, and he probably won't be playing with any discomfort in his ankle, I don't see how the Suns are going to beat the Lakers. I really don't. They're going to push them. Like Devin Booker is going to be great. Chris Paul is going to be great. The Suns are going to do what they do. I just don't think it's going to be enough. So I really can't pick the Suns because I think looks like that's going to be the first round matchup. But we'll see. Maybe the Warriors could potentially upset. Curry drops 40 and the Lakers win the next game and they have to face the Jazz, which I think they would beat the Jazz as well.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to pick
the
Suns. Yeah, I'm not going to pick the Suns. The other teams, I guess I could. Do I want to pick the Clippers? Not really. I really don't. I think the Clippers are I think the Clippers are going to struggle with the Mavericks. I'm not going to say the Mavericks are going to win because Kristaps Porzingis is just not First of all, he's injury prone and he's kind of dealing with an injury right now. So I'm not expecting. And we saw it in last year's series when he got injured. He basically, that was the difference because when he was healthy, he was killing the Clippers. The Clippers do not have a good matchup for a fully healthy Kristaps Porzingis. The problem is he's not fully healthy, and he's also not very consistent when he's on the basketball court in general. So I'm not going to pick the Mavs to win, to beat the Clippers. But overall in the Clippers, can I really say the Clippers are a threat? I really don't want to. I'm not going to say that they are.
I will. And only under one stipulation. That is if PG plays like PG and he doesn't play like that guy in the bubble.
P, baby.
But if playoff P shows up, then I think they have to be the highest contender to the Lakers. Now, the fact that they deliberately lost a few games towards the end of the season so that they were the 4 seed speaks to me. I feel like the Lakers have already won. Exactly. I feel like the Lakers have pretty much already won the series mentally already before it even happened because of that. But I think if you're talking about just pure talent, I would still say my second favorite would be Utah because of that defense, because they've been so consistently great all year. But I would still say when it comes to sheer star power, there's no question it's the Clippers. And, again, if PG can score, is it even too much to ask him to score close to 20 a night? If he can score close to 20 a night, then I think they can certainly compete with the Lakers. Now, again, I said last week, I still think the Lakers are my favorite team to win the championship. But that would obviously mean that they beat every other team in the West that they face, and I still think they would. But if we're talking about just a sheer contender, I don't think you can say anybody else other than the Clippers because of the sheer star power.
The Clippers, and this is no credit to me. I was talking to my buddy Harrison about this. This is all credit to him. He told me this story. The Clippers are like when you meet a 10, like an absolute dime piece, but she's socially awkward. Oh, that's what the Clippers are. They're so perfect, and then boom, playoff time. Paul George shooting threes off the top of the side of the backboard. Boom, Kawhi just disappears in the fourth quarter. They're going to struggle with Dallas just like they did last year, and they struggled with Denver. They're going to struggle with Dallas this year. They should beat them this year. I think they're better than they were last year. They have some better role players, and Kawhi's playing really well. So is Paul George. But when they get later, it looks like they're going to play the Lakers if they would. So this year would seem like Lakers-Clippers conference finals. We thought we were going to get it last year. This is the year that it would probably happen. Clippers as the 4 seed, Lakers as the 7 seed. Crazy 4-7 conference finals in the West. When was the last time a top 3 seed didn't make the conference finals in the West? 15, 20. I don't know. It's been a while, but
think about that.
Yes, that's what the Clippers are.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I completely agree with Max. If you had to pick one team, it has to be the Clippers, right? I think the Nuggets. If Jamal Murray was still there, yes, but I just don't know because the Nuggets. Who do they got to go through? They got to go through the Trailblazers, and I'm curious to see how Dame plays. I'm curious to see if Dame can take that series to 7 games. I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, Nurkic came back. I don't know why it can't happen.
Yeah,
Well,
for that series, I'm actually going to take the Nuggets to win. And 6 to 7 games. It's going to be very close. The Blazers were playing really bad. Dame was kind of dealing with a little bit of an injury for the past couple months, but they've really turned it on. Dame, he fulfilled his promise. He got that guy bet his house. He literally bet his house on Twitter. Said, "Dame, get this team 42 wins," and they got to that.
He definitely did
spot. Dame got him to 42 wins. So shout out to that guy. But I'm gonna pick the Nuggets to win this series, and it's just because I think Jokic is a better playoff performer than Dame. They actually matched up a couple years ago. This is before Dame. Or actually, this is the series after Dame hit a shot against OKC. Before, obviously, Jokic was this MVP caliber player. Jokic had a better series. Like CJ McCollum was the best player, and that was the biggest reason. Dame wasn't that bad, but CJ McCollum was the reason that they won that series, the biggest reason they won. And I think Jokic is going to play like the MVP because he just steps up in the playoffs. Look at his numbers. His numbers go up in every single playoff series he's played in his career. Michael Porter Jr., I can't express enough how good Michael Porter. So there are 2 players in NBA history who have averaged over 19 or over 20 points a game on 65% effective field goal percentage. Number 1 is Wilt Chamberlain, and number 2 is Michael Porter Jr. Like that's how efficient of an off-ball scorer and shooter this guy is. Yeah, Missouri. And again, he dealt with that injury, before, so that's why he slipped to 14. But he's as talented as they come. He's going to be one of the best scorers in the league at his peak. And he's fulfilling that Jamal Murray role. Now, I think because they don't have Jamal Murray, their ceiling is capped. I honestly could see them going on close to a finals run if they had Jamal Murray, but I don't think it's going to be there. They'd also have to face the Lakers in the second round, assuming the Lakers get past the Suns. And I think they would lose that series. Maybe they make it a little bit more competitive because Jokic is better than he was last year. But they wouldn't beat the Lakers, especially not without Jamal Murray. But I am expecting the Nuggets to beat the Blazers.
Yeah. I think it's going to be one of the more interesting first-round series because, look, people have made a lot of excuses for Dame Lillard, and this is a great chance for him. He has the second, third, maybe the 4th best player in this series on his team. Obviously, him being the second best player, maybe even the first, depending on how you view Jokic. But the Nuggets are 12-5 since Jamal Murray got injured. Part of that, obviously, due to Jokic, but more importantly, Michael Porter Jr., so they've been playing well. The Blazers really haven't, but Blazers aren't a great defensive team. They've been playing better defense recently, but they're not a great defensive team. I do expect the Nuggets to win. I expect some great performances from Dame like we've seen over the years, but can he put it together for 7 games?
Yeah, it's going to be a battle between Jokic and Dame, and I think Jokic is just going to outplay him. I think Dame is going to have a series where he kind of puts up it's going to be – I don't think he's going to underperform, but I also don't really think he's going to overperform. I just think he's going to put up Damian Lillard kind of numbers, but I think Jokic is going to rise to the occasion even more and put up his MVP numbers even a bit better. It's just the kind of player that he is. If you look at his numbers and you've watched how he's played in the playoffs, he's literally his numbers have increased. His production has gotten better in every single playoff series he's played in his entire career. I don't see that being any different now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going with upset. I think if there's one series where there could be an upset in the playoffs, I think it's the series. I don't think that either the 76ers or the Nets will lose. I don't know if I don't think Jazz will lose Suns. I think they're still, unless if they obviously play the Lakers, but they probably wouldn't even be favored. So I'm going to pick the Blazers. I am. But let's switch it over to UFC real quick. I want to talk about UFC 262. Max, Jake, let's talk about it real quick. Charles Oliveira is the new lightweight champion. All I want to say about this is I've said it many times, he's been my favorite fighter just because I remember I watched 2 of his fights when I first got in UFC. I watched his fight against Ferguson, the armbar, right? I love that fight. But all I want to say is don't forget about Michael Chandler. That's all I want to say, right? Because there's going to be many people who look at Oliveira, say he's the champion, and kind of forget about Chandler's name. Chandler won the first round. Chandler was this close to knocking out Charles Oliveira and becoming the lightweight champion. Michael Chandler will be back, and I'm not going to confidently say, oh, he's done, because let's say the loser of Poirier McGregor goes to Chandler. I think Chandler wins that fight, and then he gets one more chance at the belt. All I'm going to say is just please don't forget about Michael Chandler.
No, and I think that's a fair point. I think that fight, the way it was drawn out was perfect, because it was such a topsy-turvy fight to predict anyways, because we didn't know if Michael Chandler was going to be able to, finish a guy like Oliveira, who could probably get him to the ground. And we thought he was probably going to submit him because he has the most submissions in the UFC. But the way that they, like you mentioned, was incredible, right? It was very, very evenly matched in the beginning, but then obviously Chandler advantage. And some argued that maybe it was, another referee could have ended that fight. I personally think the referee made the right decision there clearly to continue on. And then Oliveira, just out of nowhere at the very start of the next round, knocks out Chandler and wins the lightweight title. And it's a great story. Now, in addition to Michael Chandler, I would say let's not forget about Justin Gaethje. I'm interested to see what happens with Justin Gaethje, because you have Poirier McGregor happening in a month or two. But what's next for Justin Gaethje? He was just in a title fight not too long ago against Khabib. And I mean, if it were up to me, listen, if the UFC drag on this Poirier McGregor thing like they are, and then after that fight, we'll have a little bit of uncertainty what the next title fight is, I think you have to put Gaethje in there. I think you have to give Michael Chandler, like you said, I think it's a great idea to give Chandler the loser of the Poirier McGregor fight. I think that'd be a huge draw. But I think you have to give Gaethje the next title shot before the winner of Poirier McGregor. And that way you can schedule it even sooner. I think Gaethje is very much deserving of the title shot. I think Dustin Poirier is obviously the most deserving, but he decided to take the money fight, which is smart. But I think next in line after Poirier has to be Justin Gaethje, and I think he should be next in line to fight Charles Oliveira for the title.
If
and
McGregor wins, though, if McGregor wins, I think, and also we have to realize if McGregor wants to continue fighting. We don't know if he'll retire after he beats Poirier. We don't know. If McGregor wins,
I think he 100% goes for the title. 100%.
And that's the fight to make. Obviously, he's the biggest name. But I completely agree with you about the Gaethje thing. I just think McGregor, if he wins that, that's the fight to make. But Jake,
how cool would it be? One more thing, just real quick. Yeah. How crazy would it be if theoretically, and this is no disrespect to Charles Oliveira, if Gaethje were to beat Oliveira in a title fight and he were to fight McGregor for the title? How intriguing of a fight would that be? That would be one heck of a brawl.
Yeah, and that's definitely where I see them going. Gaethje hasn't fought since losing to Khabib, and he was the number one contender, then lost to the best guy pretty much ever. Then he retired, so Gaethje never really lost his number one contendership. Just the timing didn't work out for him to get another title fight. He relinquished the belt, Khabib did, and then this fight with Chandler and Oliveira happened so fast. Gaethje still wasn't ready to compete. Now he is. Surely should still be the number one contender. I do expect him to beat Oliveira, but and if he does, then I would surely assume that the number one contender would then come between the winner of McGregor and Poirier, and then Chandler does have to work his way back into the hunt. I think he will. He said after his fight that within 12 months he'll hold the strap. I think within 12 months he'll get one more shot. Not sure if he's going to win, depending on the matchup. I think there are higher ups in this division that he can beat, but I think within 12 months, Michael Chandler will be main eventing another championship fight pay-per-view.
Yeah, and just the final thing I want to talk about too is Tony Ferguson, right? Lost to Beneil Dariush, and that was I feel bad for Ferguson, right? I mean, you got to feel for him because he was so confident going into that fight. He just looks completely outmatched. He's looked completely outmatched the past two fights. Max, I just want to ask you, where do you go if you're Ferguson? Do you fight one more time? And if you lose that, are you done? Where are you at with Ferguson right now?
Well, if it were up to me, I would hang up the boots and I would just, call it a career. I think Tony Ferguson has had an incredible career. I think he's a 100% a UFC Hall of Famer, in the making. And I just think that, considering the way, it's not that he lost. The issue isn't that he lost. It's the fashion in which he has lost these fights. He's shown tremendous toughness to even withstand the brawl against Gaethje, even though he ended up getting finished late in the fifth. Most fighters would have been finished way earlier than that, if you guys remember that fight. He was taking a beating. And then you go to the Oliveira fight. his arm was bent all the way back, right? Most guys would have tapped there, but Tony Ferguson doesn't tap. This last fight against Dariush, his ankle popped. His popped when he put him in an ankle lock, and he didn't tap. The fact that you saw Tony Ferguson screaming because of the pain.
Twice.
You don't see Tony Ferguson. Yeah, you don't see Tony Ferguson screaming, right? So that tells you he was in serious. So Tony Ferguson, listen, his toughness is never in question. He's the toughest dude I've ever seen as a fighter. Now, if you have dignity, if you're Tony Ferguson, you end it off now. I just don't know if he's getting mauled by Dariush like this. And Dariush is a good fighter, but he's not anywhere near the tier of like a Justin Gaethje even, or in this case, a Charles Oliveira, who's now the lightweight champion. If he's getting beat up by Dariush, it's not even close. I worry if he's lost those fundamentals and that confidence in a fight. So I would call it a career, a wonderful career. You're going to be remembered very highly and just call it quits. But I think Tony Ferguson wants to fight one more, and I don't agree with it, but hey, I'll be rooting for him all the way.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember when we were all praying for Khabib versus Ferguson like a year ago, and it didn't happen?
That was the fight to make. That was the fight to make, man.
And now, I mean, Ferguson got beat pretty bad by Gaethje, then lost 2 straight in 2020 and 2021. It's rough. I don't know if he's going to hang it up. He said he's angry and wants to end the losing streak. He was 26-3 last year. Now he's 26-6. So Cowboy versus Ferguson retires.
I would be so
God.
sad.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe on the undercard for Logan versus Floyd, that could happen.
Man, give me Logan. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, give me Floyd. But let's finish it off with a little baseball talk, right? You got to do our 5 minutes, quick 5-minute action of baseball. I don't really know where to start. I mean, I went to a Dodgers game 2 days ago. Dodgers looked very meh.
Daniel, you caught a baseball. Congrats, man.
Congrats. It was a good meme. But I don't know, Jake. What do you think about your Yankees right now?
They're playing better, and the injuries are now starting to pile up. Aaron Hicks might be out for the year. He might be back tomorrow. He might be out for the year. It's a mess. Gleyber Torres is going to come back soon, and now Stanton, slight IL stint. He's been playing well, but Aaron Judge back in the MVP contention, and they've been playing better. I think they're still one of the best teams in the American League, if one of the best teams in baseball. Huge series against the White Sox this weekend. This weekend series against the Chicago White Sox, the consensus number 1 team in the American League right now, with Houston at number 2. Then I would go Yankees at 3. But they're playing better baseball. They're going to get healthier, specifically in their pitching. Zach Britton is due back pretty soon. So is Darren O'Day. Luis Severino's come back over the summer. They need to start hitting. They're still a middle tier hitting team. Way too many solo home runs. They're not getting on base. But I think they're in a good spot going forward.
Yeah. Yankees are definitely getting better, and they're going to continue to go up in that division. But I don't know. For me, the surprise to me is the San Francisco Giants have just been like shockingly so good this year. And it's a team that I expected to be solid, like around 500-ish team, maybe on like the worst side or the better side. But just they had that dynasty in the 2010s where they won 3 World Series in like 5-6 years.
3 and 6.
Yeah, it was 3 and 6 years. And really since then, they've had kind of a sharp decline. But look, what great organizations do is they don't, sure that you can decline after a dynasty, but it's not going to last all too long. And the Giants have put together the pieces to be a really good team moving, not only now, but like just moving forward. I mean, look at how dangerous they're being right now. Like Buster Posey and Evan Longoria, they're having just like Renaissance kind of years, which I was not expecting that at all, because both of those guys are completely past their prime. But they're having pretty solid seasons so far. We'll see how much it keeps up. But their offense is overall solid. Like it's a good offense, a pretty good, solid hitting team. Their pitching though has just been, their starting pitching has been incredibly good. Like all 5 of their starters are just amazing. I think they have 3 starters who have less than a 1.0 ERA, which is absolutely insane. So that's been amazing, and it's going to be exciting because this is a team that I was just not expecting to be at number 1, especially in the division with the Dodgers and the Padres. Like I was not expecting them to be first in that division at all. I thought they'd be 3rd, maybe even 4th. But the fact that they're surprising is very good, because I thought it was going to be a good team moving forward, and this would be a good stepping stone, building block kind of year, taking a next step. But they're going 2 steps ahead of what I expected from them. And it's going to be interesting to see what their, end of the season averages are for, guys like Posey and Longoria and Yastrzemski. And then obviously to see if they're pitching, like which of their pitchers are going to keep this up and which are going to regress or, kind of come down to just normalcy. I think some of them will obviously come down, but hopefully one or two guys can emerge and actually be certified aces like they're playing right now. Because then they actually might have a chance to do some serious damage in October.
I mean, you could say for the Giants that they've been like number one team ERA in rotation. They've the number one rotation in baseball in terms of ERA. And two of their guys, specifically probably their two best guys, when it comes down to it, have missed over half the year. Aaron Sanchez has only thrown 20 innings. Johnny Cueto has only thrown 27 innings. Aaron Sanchez has been amazing for them over this season. Gausman has been a Cy Young contender. Anthony DeSclafani, diamond in the rough coming over from Cincinnati. Alex Wood, where has he been? 61% ground ball rate, one of the highest in the league. And Logan Webb, surprise, not superstar, but surprise, very, very effective end of the rotation guy. Has had 3 really good starts in a row. Great. He has great stuff, forces a lot of ground balls, highest ground ball rate in all baseball, pitched really well against a good Cincinnati lineup in a hitter-friendly park, allowed 2 runs over 7 innings. I turned that game on in the second inning, watched it up until the 5th, then turned it back on the 7th. He was still in the game. I was like, how is this kid still in the game? He has great stuff. They're 6 deep in the rotation. And for a team that pitches in a very pitcher-friendly park, they're going to keep winning games this year. This is not a fluke. This is a very good baseball team. I expect their pitching to stay hot. Their offense has not been on fire the whole year. I expect their offense to regress a little, but they're still going to win a lot of games and probably make the playoffs just because of their starting rotation.
There it is. There's you guys' baseball talk. 5 minutes of action for the MLB. But guys, thank you guys for tuning in, right? Every single Tuesday night, we're here. We're debating. We're talking the biggest sports news, NBA, NFL, MLB, UFC, all the good stuff right here on the TWSN show. As always, guys, make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. We got so much good content coming here. We got a team of 50 people, articles coming out every single day. All the content here at the Right Way Sports Network. But guys, Will, Jake, Max, thanks for tuning in. As always, guys, giving us a fun show today. NBA, I'm curious to see what happens. And then next week,
to bury those Celtics.
Next week, yeah, I'm gonna go turn on my TV right now, see my Celtics play some basketball, and hopefully next week I'll come on here and talk some trash to Will. But thank you guys for tuning in. As always, we will see you guys next Tuesday night. Have a good night.